Your phone buzzes before sunrise, a calendar alert, a message, a payment, a reminder from a world built on cities, clocks, laws, roads, money, and millions of strangers trusting systems they will never see. Now strip all of that away. No cities, no writing, no kings, no temples, no tax records, no walls, no armies, no official history. For most of our species' existence, that was normal. Humans were brilliant, social, emotional, inventive, but civilization, as we recognize it, arrived shockingly late. Our species may go back roughly 300,000 years, with some of the oldest Homo sapiens fossils found at Jebel Irhoud in Morocco. But farming, settled life, and cities only appear much later in the archaeological record. Agriculture transformed human life around 12,000 years ago, and Uruk in southern Mesopotamia became one of the world's first true cities by around 3,200 BC. So here's the question. What if civilization didn't wait until the end of the Ice Age? What if, 50,000 years earlier, while mammoths still crossed frozen plains and hunter-gatherers still painted signs in deep caves, one group of humans made a discovery so powerful that history cracked open too soon? Not just a camp, not just a tribe, a real civilization. A world of permanent settlements, stored food, organized labor, sacred buildings, symbols, laws, trade routes, leaders, and children born into a society far larger than a family band. If that happened, everything changes. Humanity would not enter the modern world late, it would enter it dangerously early. The first change would begin with food. Civilization cannot survive on imagination alone. A tribe can move with the herds, follow rivers, gather roots, fish, hunt, and adapt. But a city cannot chase food across the landscape. A city is a promise, stay here, and tomorrow there will still be enough. In our timeline, that promise became possible when humans gradually domesticated plants and animals after the last ice age. But in this alternate timeline, something strange happens around 60,000 years ago. Maybe a valley in East Africa, the Levant, or southern Arabia becomes unusually stable for centuries. Maybe wild grasses grow thick around a seasonal lake. Maybe fish migrations return with predictable timing. Maybe a human group discovers that seeds dropped near camp come back stronger next season. At first, no one calls it farming, they only notice. The old women remember where the best grains grow. The children scatter seeds without understanding why. Hunters leave bones near camp, attracting animals. Families return to the same river bend again and again. Then one generation makes the leap. They stop wandering all year, they build shelters meant to last. They dig storage pits, they protect certain plants, they burn patches of land to encourage new growth. They trap young animals instead of killing all of them. They begin to manage the landscape, and the moment food becomes stored, power is born. Because stored food does something hunted food rarely does. It creates ownership. A dead antelope must be eaten quickly, but a pit of grain can be guarded, counted, hidden, stolen, promised, inherited. Suddenly, hunger is no longer just a force of nature. Hunger becomes political. One family has more, another has less. One person knows where the storage pit is. Another controls who gets fed during winter. A strong hunter is still respected, but now the keeper of food may become even more powerful. And that is how the first inequality begins. Not with gold, with grain. The village grows. 10 families become 20. 20 become 50. Children survive in greater numbers because food is more predictable. Elders live longer and remember more. Skilled toolmakers no longer spend every day searching for calories. Some people become full-time builders. Some become ritual leaders. Some become guards. Some become messengers. This is where civilization becomes real. Not because people are smarter than before. Humans were already intelligent. They had language, memory, emotion, art, and complex social bonds. Early symbolic behavior and cave art show that prehistoric people were capable of abstract thought long before cities appeared. Recent discoveries in Sulawesi have pushed some claims for rock art far deeper into the past, including reports of hand stencils dated tens of thousands of years old. The difference is pressure. A permanent settlement creates problems that nomads can walk away from. Waste piles up, arguments repeat, neighbors compete, disease spreads. Food must be measured, water must be defended. Children must be taught rules that did not exist before. The first laws are probably not written. They are remembered. Do not take from the storage pit without permission. Do not hunt near the sacred grove. Do not break the irrigation channel. Do not marry within the forbidden line. Do not enter the grain house after sunset. At first, these rules are spoken by elders. Then they become ritual. Then they become sacred. Because if a rule is only human, someone can challenge it. But if a rule belongs to the ancestors, the spirits, or the sky, disobeying it feels dangerous. This is how religion and government begin to overlap. The earliest city does not need a palace first. It needs a reason for hundreds of unrelated people to obey the same story. So they build a place no single family owns. A platform, a shrine, a painted cave chamber, a wooden tower on a hill, a circle of stones facing the sunrise. People bring food there. They bring animal bones, shells, red ochre, carved figures. The ritual leader stands before the crowd and tells them the valley is protected because their people are chosen, watched, and bound together. That story becomes glue. Without it, the settlement is just crowded shelters. With it, the settlement becomes a civilization. But here is the danger. This civilization begins 50,000 years too early, in a world that is still unstable, cold, and wild. The Ice Age is not finished. Sea levels are lower. Deserts expand and shrink. Forests move. Rivers change. Massive animals still shape the landscape. Climate swings can destroy food systems before people understand why. In our timeline, civilization emerged after long environmental transitions near the Holocene, when many regions became more suitable for farming and permanent settlement. But this earlier civilization is born in a harsher Pleistocene world. That means every success is fragile. A bad winter is not just a bad winter, it is a political crisis. If the stored food runs low, people ask why the leaders failed. If the rains shift, priests must explain why the spirits are angry. If animals avoid the valley, hunters accuse farmers of weakening the old ways. And soon, the first revolution begins. Not with banners, with hunger. A group of hunters leaves the settlement, claiming the old life was freer. Farmers call them traitors. Guards block the grain house. Someone sets fire to a storage hut. The village divides between those who trust the new system and those who believe civilization has trapped them. This is the first great human argument: freedom versus security, move and risk hunger, stay and risk control. And once humans invent control, they rarely forget it. The settlement survives its first crisis, but it changes. The leaders become harder. The grain house is guarded. The shrine becomes larger. Rules become stricter. Children are raised not just by families, but by the system. Work is assigned. Food is counted. Punishment becomes public. This is the birth of bureaucracy before writing. But memory has limits, so the civilization develops symbols earlier. Maybe marks on bone count grain baskets. Maybe carved stones represent families. Maybe knots in cord track debts. Maybe painted signs show who owns which field. These are not full writing yet, but they are the ancestors of writing. The moment a mark can remember something better than a person, society changes again. A debt can outlive an argument. A border can outlive a witness. A leader's command can travel farther than his voice. Now the first city can expand. Its traders carry obsidian, shells, pigments, tools, and stories across enormous distances. Neighboring hunter-gatherers see the settlement and react in different ways. Some are fascinated, some are disgusted, some join, some raid, some copy it. And this is where the alternate timeline becomes explosive. Civilization spreads not across a quiet farming world, but across a planet still filled with other human groups, and perhaps other human relatives. Around 50,000 years ago, Homo sapiens were spreading into new regions, and they were not always alone. Neanderthals, Denisovans, and other archaic human populations still existed in parts of Eurasia. If one Homo sapiens civilization gained stored food, larger populations, organized labor, long-distance trade, and proto-writing this early, contact with other human groups might look very different. Not just interbreeding, diplomacy, war, absorption, myth-making. To the city people, Neanderthals might become mountain spirits, rival nations, feared outsiders, or powerful trading partners. To hunter bands beyond the settlement, the city might look supernatural, a place where food sits in houses, leaders command hundreds, and strangers obey symbols carved into bone. Civilization would not make humans peaceful. It would make conflict larger. A hunter-gatherer feud can be deadly, but a settled society can store weapons, feed guards, build walls, and plan revenge across seasons. The first war might happen tens of thousands of years before Sumer, Egypt, or the Indus Valley. A rival valley copies farming but refuses tribute. A trade route is blocked. A sacred animal is stolen. A drought pushes desperate outsiders toward the grain stores. At first, the city builds fences, then ditches, then walls. And the wall changes the human mind. Inside the wall is us. Outside the wall is them. Civilization creates belonging, but it also sharpens exclusion. Children grow up believing the people inside the wall are protected, chosen, civilized. Those outside are wild, cursed, dangerous, or less human. That idea may become one of the most powerful inventions in history. More powerful than stone tools, more dangerous than fire. Because once a society can define who counts as fully human, it can justify almost anything. But the early civilization also creates wonders. A child born inside the city sees things no human child in our timeline should see for another 50,000 years. A marketplace at dawn, smoke rising from hundreds of hearths, painted symbols on storage walls. Elders teaching star patterns. Ritual dancers wearing animal masks. Workers dragging timber for a public building. A healer grinding plants beside a sick child. A storyteller describing ancestors who first tamed the valley. Knowledge accumulates. That is civilization's greatest weapon. A nomadic band carries knowledge in minds and bodies. A civilization can layer knowledge across generations in one place. Mistakes become lessons. Tools become traditions. Traditions become systems. Medicine improves. Astronomy improves. Architecture improves. Navigation improves. Myths become calendars. Calendars become planning. By 45,000 years ago, this civilization may have several towns. By 40,000 years ago, it may have a regional network. By 35,000 years ago, it may have boats crossing coastlines with organized cargo. By 30,000 years ago, it may have true writing. And then comes the terrifying possibility. By the time our real timeline is still deep in the Ice Age, this alternate humanity might already have kingdoms. Not bronze kingdoms, not iron empires. They may not have metal in the same way yet, but they could have wood, bone, stone, fiber, boats, walls, mathematics, astronomy, grain records, hereditary leaders, and organized religion. The world would look ancient before ancient history, but could it last? That is the question that decides everything. Because starting civilization early does not guarantee reaching modernity early. It may mean collapsing early. This first civilization is built on fragile crops, unstable climate, and limited domesticated animals. It expands faster than its environment can support. Forests near the settlements are cut. Animals are overhunted. Soil weakens. Waste contaminates water. Disease spreads through dense populations. Then the climate shifts. Not slightly, violently. A cold period hits. Rain patterns break. Rivers shrink or flood. The food system fails across multiple settlements at once. The priests cannot stop it. The leaders cannot hide it. The walls cannot keep hunger out. The civilization begins to fracture. People abandon outer towns. Trade routes disappear. Symbols are forgotten. Grain records become meaningless because there is no grain left to count. Temples burn. Leaders are killed or flee. Families scatter into the wild, carrying fragments of a world that no longer exists. And then history does something cruel. It erases them. Wood rots. Mud walls melt. Floods bury villages. Ice grinds landscapes. Caves collapse. Coastlines drown when sea levels rise. 50,000 years later, archaeologists might find almost nothing. A carved bone with strange marks. A buried storage pit too regular to be natural. A line of post holes beneath ancient sediment. A stone platform nobody can explain. A myth preserved by descendants who no longer remember what it means. And that may be the darkest twist. If civilization had started 50,000 years earlier, we might not know. It could have risen, expanded, collapsed, and vanished so completely that modern humans would mistake its survivors for ordinary hunter-gatherers. But they would carry ghosts, a fear of broken laws, a memory of sacred walls, a story of a drowned city, a forbidden sign carved into bone, a myth about the first people who tried to live like gods and were punished by the earth. When civilization finally rises again in our familiar timeline, in Mesopotamia, Egypt, the Indus Valley, China, and beyond, maybe it would not be a first attempt. Maybe it would be a return. People would gather near rivers and feel something ancient in the pattern. They would store grain and unknowingly repeat an old mistake. They would build temples and believe they were inventing the sacred city, when in truth, humanity had already tried once before and failed. So what if civilization started 50,000 years earlier? We might have reached writing before the pyramids by tens of thousands of years. We might have built cities beneath Ice Age skies. We might have met Neanderthals not just as neighbors, but as rivals and allies. We might have invented kings, walls, calendars, taxes, and war before the last mammoths disappeared. But we also might have learned civilization's hardest lesson much earlier. A city is not just a triumph over nature, it is a bargain with it. And if that bargain is made too soon, in the wrong climate, with the wrong tools, under the wrong pressures, civilization does not become destiny, it becomes a warning. Because the first city may not have been the beginning of history. It may have been the first time humans built a world too heavy for the earth to hold.